Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the first annual open meeting of the British School at Athens, over which I have the honour of presiding. I begin by expressing the school's gratitude to the Secretary-General of the Archeological, Dr. Vasilios Petrakos, and to his staff, and to the many friends and colleagues who make our work possible. We particularly thank the staff of what is now the Ministry of Culture and Sports. We are most grateful to Dr. Maria Andreadaki-Vlazaki, both as Secretary-General of the Ministry of Culture and Sports and previously as Director-General of Antiquities, to the former Secretary-General of the Ministry of Culture and Sports, Dr. Lina Mandoni, and to Dr. Eleni Korka, the new Director-General of Antiquities, as well as to the numerous colleagues in the Ministry who make our archaeological work possible. In particular, we thank those in charge of the regions in which our major fieldwork took place. Dr. Dimitris Athanasoulis, of the Effort of Antiquities of the Cyclades, Dr. Stella Chrysoulaki, of the Effort of Antiquities of Western Attica, Piraeus and the Islands, Dr. Paraskevi Kalamara, Effort of Antiquities of Euboea, Mr. Ioannis Kanonidis, Effort of Antiquities of Chalkidiki and Mount Athos, Dr. Konstantinas Kissas, Effort of Antiquities of Corinthia, Mrs. Evangelia Pandou, Effort of Antiquities of Laconia, Dr. Alkistis Papadimitriou, Effort of Antiquities of the Argolid, Mrs. Maria Fotini Papakonstantinou, Effort of Antiquities of Theotis and Evritania, Dr. Angeniki Simosi, the Effort of Maritime Antiquities, Mrs. Christa Sofianou, Effort of Antiquities of Lasithi, and Mrs. Vasiliki Sithiakaki, Effort of Antiquities of Heraklion. I add my own thanks as Director to all BSA staff for everything they have contributed to our 2015 programme of work. The school's research programme in 2015 was once again extensive, including the archaeological fieldwork and study shown here, and the work of the Fitch Laboratory and the Knossos Research Centre. Other activities of the school span many other disciplines: history, anthropology, philosophy, and the fine arts, including music, for example, represented by a successful conference in collaboration with the Athens Conservatoire and King's College London on music and identity, which appears in the centre of this montage, which reflects the rich mosaic of our activities. Research, of course, demands publication, and as noted last year, the school has now completed an overhaul of its publication arrangements. In addition to the annual of the BSA and the archaeological reports, we continue to collaborate with the French School on Archaeology in Greece Online. Our supplementary series also continues as a vehicle for publication of BSA fieldwork projects, while 2 new studies series are now established. British School at Athens Studies in Greek Antiquity is published by Cambridge University Press. Its first volume on human mobility and technological transfer in the prehistoric Mediterranean should appear this year. And British School at Athens Modern Greek and Byzantine Studies is published by Ashgate, now part of Taylor and Francis, and so its first volume, shown here on the right, appeared just before Christmas, with 2 further volumes in production. Crete has been a focal point for BSA archaeological fieldwork for well over a century, and it is here that I begin my fieldwork review. First, I note a change of personnel. After a successful 3-year period as BSA Knossos curator, Dr. Matthew Haysom, shown here on the left, has moved on to a lectureship in Newcastle. His replacement, seen here on the far right, is Dr. Caroline Thurston, who is present this evening. Also at the table in the photograph are the former Knossos Curatorial Project assistant, Flora Michalaki, and her successor, Hannah Gwyther, while the 4th member of the Piraea is Kostas Venianakis, Knossos groundskeeper and handyman who recently took early retirement. We are also grateful to Anthula Vasiliadis, who filled in between Matthew's departure and Caroline's commencement at Knossos. The techniques of urban life form a constant thread through much of the BSA's recent fieldwork, and the Knossos Research Centre forms the base for continuing study of the city of Knossos from its 5 millennia of Neolithic occupation to the multi-period focus of the Knossos Urban Landscape Project, initiated 10 years ago. New archaeological data are being generated at Knossos by 2 fieldwork projects, the Gypsades project, which commenced in 2014, and the Geophysical Survey of Roman Knossos, new this year. A first season of geophysical survey in September 2015 sought to generate a working knowledge of the urban layout of Roman Knossos to aid our understanding of extant remains and facilitate study of the extensive Roman materials from BSA excavations retained in the Stratigraphical Museum. The initial season aimed firstly to test the efficacy of geophysical survey over a wide swathe of the urban core, secondly to provide preliminary information about the Roman city's topography, and thirdly to identify targets for subsequent, more detailed geophysical research using resistivity and ground-penetrating radar. Gradiometer survey linked to a GPS system covered 148 30 by 30 metre grids, slightly less than 10 hectares. A first preliminary evaluation of the results suggests with some certainty that the historic city had at least two grid systems, indicated here in the upper and lower plots. The north-south grid clearly associated with surviving standing Roman remains. How these grids intersected and whether they were in operation at the same time is a research goal for future seasons. It can also be confidently asserted that the slopes of the Acropolis Hill, Monasteria Korkefali, were intensively utilised in antiquity. The structure marked in yellow, with yellow arrows here, for example, lines up with a wall protruding from a terrace to the west, and its long eastern wall is on the same alignment as another modern terrace. The Roman period aqueduct, which survives in this area, overlies this rectilinear structure, which suggests it is probably classical to Hellenistic. Immediately to the west of this, marked by the red arrow, is a clear square feature, visible over two terraces, with a height difference of over a metre, suggesting it is quite substantial. It seems clear that this area of the city saw significant construction in the classical to Roman periods. Alignment of buildings probably depended on ancient terracing and topography, and so no neat alignment with the city grid will be visible. Plans from past excavations will be digitised and placed in the GIS environment alongside these results in order to build as complete a topographic model of the city as possible. Although geophysics clearly constitutes a valid investigative technique for Knossos, they are not sufficient alone to untangle the complicated topographic history of the city. Integrating detailed GPS survey of standing remains and potentially use of selected data from the Knossos Urban Landscape Survey will be necessary to construct a satisfactory image of the Roman city. The Gypsades excavation project is a collaborative project whose overall aim is to reveal a Knossian Bronze Age neighbourhood by uncovering fine-grained data on consumption, the nature and role of agricultural production, and broader issues surrounding the emergence, maintenance and decline of the Knossian urban elite. The Middle Minoan building discovered in 2014, Building 2, revealed in 2015 well-preserved architecture dating to the Middle Minoan 3A period, with evidence for an earthquake destruction. Trench 5 was initiated in 2015, positioned immediately next to a modern robbing trench within the wooded area to the north, to assess the relationship of this newly excavated area with results of the 2010 to 2011 geophysics, which had defined a square feature measuring roughly 30 by 30 metres in this location. The earliest architectural features shown at the top left here are associated with Middle Minoan 2 material, with neopalatial construction to the north. The entire area of the trench was covered by a fill, delineated by a semicircular single-course rubble wall running east to west, stratified above the fill and including Bronze Age pottery with large post-Bronze Age pottery with large fragments of plain and relief pithoi of 7th century BC date. The primary goal of the 2015 season, however, was to define the extent to the north and east of the late Bronze Age building, Building 1, partially investigated in 2014, and to investigate its chronology, development and abandonment, completing excavation as well of the burnt deposits in Space 106. The north and east limits of Building 1 were defined by single-course foundations in recycled ashlar masonry, associated with an LM1B to LM2 construction phase, resting on neopalatial or possibly protopalatial walls of different construction style. Excluding a possible southeastern extension, the building's total area is estimated about 105 square metres. A test, indicated here by an arrow, conducted outside the facade, revealed possible midden deposits rich in broken fine tablewares and bioarchaeological material. Further excavation is required to clarify their precise association. Tests within Building 1's interior revealed that it had been stripped of all traces of earlier material down to bedrock, which at some point in the building's history had served as a floor. Evidence for the last use phase of the building in late Minoan 3A2 to 3B early, which ended with fire, comes from the south end of the building, including space 106. At its floor level, space 106 was found largely empty, apart from the lower half of a large LM3A pithos, shown here, with relief decoration found in situ, a champagne cup and a juglet on either side. The destruction fill of the room bore the clearest signs of burning in the west, while these were patchy, far more uneven, and intermingled with rubble in the eastern half. A fragmentary limestone slab, indicated with a yellow arrow here, was found collapsed at an angle, capping a patch of greyish ashy soil containing carbonized pulses, apparently stored in perishable containers, about which we shall hear more in the lecture that follows. Combined artifactual, bioarchaeological and micromorphological study will define the sequence of events which shaped this area's microhistory. Away from Knossos, on the east coast of Crete, a third and final season of excavation at Palekastro revealed the full extent of 3 buildings occupied in late Minoan 1 and 3, with indications of earlier habitation on the Argyrakis, Mavroukoukoulakis and Papadakis plots. Excavation in 2015 confirmed that building AP1 is a substantial late Minoan 3 building with at least 2 phases of occupation in that period, and a final abandonment during Palekastro period 15, late Minoan 3A2 to B. The late Minoan 3 building utilised some walls belonging to an earlier neopalatial structure decorated with frescoes, whose foundation may go back to the protopalatial period. By contrast, building MP1, lying to the south of AM across a narrow street, appears not to have been reoccupied in late Minoan 3. It was in use in middle Minoan 3 to late Minoan 1, much of the material belonging to late Minoan 1A, including a multi-layer tephra deposit found in space 2, indicated here with an arrow. Building AM appears to be a large, 310-metre square, neopalatial building of fairly typical layout and circulation, with similar finds to those of other buildings from this period on the site. There was a pre-existing structure, at least earlier in the neopalatial, and there was some late Minoan 3 reuse in various areas of the building. Major reconstruction in late Minoan 1B fits the pattern elsewhere on the site, and AM resembles other late Minoan 1B buildings at Palekastro in size, use of ashlar masonry, paved floors, plasters and so forth, and also an increased focus in late Minoan 1B on industry and trade at a regional, local and domestic scale. Repeated finds of strainers, fireboxes or other incense-related vessels, storage jars, weights and small stone vessels could all be involved in the production of aromatics at an intermediate scale, somewhere between a cottage industry and a manufactory befitting the inhabitants or associates of that house. Likewise, the implied scale of grinding installation, if it was for grain and not for aromatic production, appears larger than necessary even for a house of that size. Evidence for violent and sudden collapse in rooms 14 and 6 in the southern part, and for massive deposition of material in rooms 10 and 13, marks the end of the late Minoan 1B building, perhaps the result of a seismic event, possibly after abandonment. The event here may be earlier than the final destruction elsewhere on the site, perhaps more Palekastro period 11 than 12 of the overall site phasing. Moving to the central Greek mainland, a second 5-year programme of collaborative work started at the Middle Neolithic site of Koutroulou Magoula in Thessaly, with the aims of refining our understanding of intrasite organisation, including indoor and outdoor spaces, and of the extent and nature of human involvement from the Neolithic to the present. Additional goals are the examination of people, plant and animal interaction, and of the production, circulation and consumption of all types of material culture, including the site's unique assemblage of figurines. The project continues to explore the site's role in local perceptions of antiquities and to develop community and public archaeology activities. Limited excavation in 2015 exposed a 38 square metre area in 2 trenches, indicated with arrows, an area extremely rich in both portable and architectural finds, producing over 22,000 sherds and more than 60 figurines and 5 house models. Excavation in this area has thus shown the existence of further substantial buildings north of those previously revealed, and reaffirmed the role and importance of unroofed spaces between houses as key activity areas and spaces of socialisation within the community. In addition to excavation, a drone was used to record the topography of the tell as a whole, and photogrammetric reconstructions of architectural features were carried out, including the late Bronze Age Tholos tomb. Soil micromorphological analysis has produced significant results, the most important of which is that a significant part of the deposit in the Magoula, including inside the stone-built buildings, is very rich in animal dung. This shows that animals were kept in the settlement for at least part of the year, possibly sharing spaces with humans. Combined archaeobotanical, zooarchaeological, phytolithic and soil micromorphological analyses show that sheep, goats and cattle were maintained using diverse animal foddering practices, some on-site and some off-site, exploiting different ecological zones. Finally, although the site's ceramics place it squarely within the Middle Neolithic, AMS dating situates a relatively short-lived Neolithic presence there between the end of the 7th and the first 2 centuries of the 6th millennia, conventionally the transitional period between early and Middle Neolithic in mainland Greece. The site thus contributes to a rethinking of Neolithic chronology in Greece, while the short-lived character of the Neolithic occupation contrasts with the evidence for extensive rebuilding and destruction. Moving further north still, 2015 saw a second season of collaborative project at Olynthos, which aims to build a holistic picture of Greek households within their urban and regional settings through a combination of modern scientific excavation and geophysical and field survey of the city and surrounding area. Excavations revealed significant parts of the domestic quarters of a house termed B96, following the system of Robinson, who excavated in the 1930s, consisting of part of a pastas, marked with a C, part of the oikos unit, including the bathing area, marked A, and flue, marked B, and adjacent living rooms to the east, marked D and E. A second flue, marked CC, was noted next door in B95. Several important points emerge, offering a basis for a more detailed future analysis and interpretation. There is clear evidence for alterations made to the living environment of the house during its period of occupation. House B96 clearly had an upper story, as demonstrated by an ashlar block found in the pastas, which must be the base for a wooden staircase leading to a gallery on the upper floor. This provides new possibilities to study separately the uses of the upper and lower stories in a classical house. Investigation of parts of the two flues provided fresh insights into the role played by this type of space. The mix of artefacts found here, together with the ash, suggests that not only did this space contain debris from fires, which may have been used for heating or cooking, but also that it was probably used for refuse disposal. Preservation of bone in these areas also provides a rich source of evidence about diet and subsistence practices. Analysis of archaeobotanical samples recovered should yield complementary evidence of plant foods. Ceramic analysis in 2015 showed that the deposits contained very few Attic or Corinthian vessels, while local finewares included some hybrid shapes. Few, if any, sherds dated later than the mid-4th century BC. Field walking yielded information about the landscape east of the north hill of the ancient city. A high density of artefacts in fields near Aios Nikolaos, a 12th century AD church excavated by Robinson, represents the clearest evidence for Byzantine occupation yet discovered by the Olynthos field survey. Evidence also emerged for productive activities on the east slope of the North Hill. Slag, misfired potsherds, loom weights, a brick mould and fire clay were all noted, although this evidence remains tentative until verified by further study. In contrast with the more northerly area surveyed last year, when a distinctive concentration of material was found at some distance from the city, it appears that further south, the boundary lay closer to the city as known from excavation. I remain with the theme of survey, but move out into the Aegean for our final 2015 fieldwork project. Following on from the Keros Island survey of 2011 and 2013, a team carried out a diachronic surface survey of southeast Naxos to analyse the context of the settlement at Daskalion and the special deposits at Kavos on Keros in their wider context within the Mikres Kyklades and surrounding islands. Equal emphasis was given to finds of all periods recovered, thus offering as a principal result a detailed record of the extent to which southeast Naxos was occupied from the early Bronze Age to the present. Field methodology already used on the Keros Island survey identified polygons of high sherd and artefact densities. The entire coastline from Volakas in the east to Kalandos in the west was covered, including the known site of Panormos. Drone mapping and geomorphological study were also undertaken. Based on preliminary ceramic examination, no Neolithic sites were preserved. There were sparse indications of the early Cycladic I period, and then abundant finds of the early Cycladic II, with fewer traces of the Middle and later Bronze Age. Obsidian was frequently observed, but much less so than on Kairos. At Spethos, particular attention was given to the cemetery and Acropolis, where a previously undocumented central building and strong wall were identified and planned. Archaic and classical material was followed by a strong representation in the Hellenistic period, including 2 towers provisionally dated to that period. The later Roman and Byzantine periods were well represented, particularly by the impressive stronghold at Irokastro, near Panormos. Use of the same methodology for the southeast Naxos survey as for the earlier Keros Island survey will permit systematic comparison of artifact densities and other parameters. Initial comparison suggests that the density of occupation on Keros in the early Bronze Age is comparable or greater to that on southeast Naxos, even excluding the sanctuary at Kavos. Survey in 2013 also generated the data for a second of 2 planned study seasons in 2015 by the Cancri Quarry Survey. Here the focus has begun to shift from primary recording and description towards interpretation of the quarrying history and of the pre- and post-quarrying occupation of the study area. At the northern end of the main quarried area, Complex A, 4 clusters of artefacts have been identified: fragments of building material and grinding stones, quartz and mica schist hand tools, and slight evidence of metalworking. The significant quantities of marble flooring, together with some marble wall cladding and tesserae, suggests relatively affluent Roman domestic structures, or potentially the reuse of such buildings or their materials in later Roman and or post-Roman buildings. Paleotopographic reconstruction shows that quarrying extended across most of the ploughed field. The buried structures thus appear to post-date stone extraction at this location. The fragmented basalt and andesite grinding stones are consistent with both domestic and quarry-related food production. The purpose or purposes of the quartz and schist, hand polishers or rubbers, and reused sherds similarly employed are as yet undetermined. Ceramics from Quarry Complex A range from early Helladic to Ottoman in date. The area appears to have been used most extensively during the Hellenistic and especially the Roman period, with activity peaking during the early and middle Roman times. The assemblage is broadly consistent with domestic activity, including significant quantities of imported fine wares, as well as more utilitarian preparation, serving and storage vessels. The early Roman pottery aligns closely with that from Corinth. Thin-walled drinking cups and local and regional fabrics are common. The amphorae emphasise the area's wide connections with imports from Rhodes, Kos, North Africa, southern Italy and Sicyon. By the Middle Roman, imported fine wares are less prominent and jugs, cups and amphorae more common. Cooking vessels appear to be large and possibly for communal dining. Thin-walled drinking cups remain common, most apparently from the 3rd century AD, and again in local or regional fabrics. Utilitarian vessels such as Lefkandi and coarse craters again find parallels from Corinth. The amphorae remain diverse in origins, with examples from North Africa, the Black Sea and the Aegean, as well as local types recorded at Isthmia, Corinth, Sicyon and the Athenian Agora. The utilitarian nature of much of the Middle Roman assemblage may suggest quarrying activity during this period. Late Roman pottery is locally common but concentrated within relatively small areas. There is a sharp rise in imported fine wares and amphorae, as well as significant numbers of large cooking pots. Imports include African red slip, Phocaean ware bowls, and Ephesian amphorae. Lesser amounts of ceramics indicate an unbroken continuity of activity from the late Roman into the 8th century AD. Minimal 9th to 11th century material gives way to small quantities of 12th and 13th century fine wares, alongside which are less datable coarse wares in some quantity. Chipped stone artefacts represent an interesting picture. Most are locally available reddish and brown flint, while higher quality grey and yellow flints were apparently imported. The full reduction sequence is represented, indicating local production of the tool types shown here. Flint tools do not correlate spatially with the limited prehistoric pottery, and obsidian is only present in small amounts, about 3%, unlike known late Neolithic and Bronze Age assemblages in the region, all suggesting the possibility of extensive and prolonged use of lithic technology in the historical period. 2 foci of prehistoric activity occur in the north, centred on the ploughed field and peripheral areas 3 and 7, PA 3 and 7 on the slide, and one more within peripheral area towards the south, peripheral area 6 towards the south. The material is rarely closely datable but spans the early to late Helladic and suggests continuation of occupation into the early Iron Age. A near-complete hiatus followed from this period until the Archaic to Classical transition, when activity resumed within widely separate areas, persisting into the Classical and in many cases Roman times. Continuing study of material from Lefkandi Xeropolis focused on study of the exceptional figures from Region 2 and small finds from both Regions 1 and 2, while the stratigraphical sequences of the so-called ritual zone were also examined. Work also continued towards the completion of the study and preparation for publication of Region 1. A conference entitled Beyond the Polis, Ritual Practices and the Construction of Social Identity in Early Greece, held in Brussels in September 2015, offered the opportunity to present study of the figurines together with the results of archaeobotanical, molluscan and zooarchaeological analyses. Caroline Thurston presented her research on the 58 previously uncatalogued figurine fragments from Region 2, all identified in post-excavation processing. Striking was the identification of 5 boat models, as against the 2 already known from previous excavations. There are also many fragments of wheel-made quadruped figurines, while a piece of a Mycenaean chariot group and 2 bird figurines were also identified. Study by Alex Mulhall of almost 2,400 bone specimens from the ritual zone of Region 2 suggested that these samples were similar in species representation to those in other areas of the site. Animal bones associated with structure B in Region 2 were little disturbed and might attest to consumption or feasting activities. Selected remains of deer, dogs and lions demonstrated the varied nature of ritual activities in Xeropolis. Although evidence for certain aspects of ritual behaviour in Region 2 is clear, the behaviours attested for certain aspects of ritual behaviour, although evidence for certain aspects of ritual behaviour in Region 2 is clear, the behaviours attested were a component of related practices taking place beyond the ritual zone in otherwise domestic spheres. Archaeobotanical evidence from structures A, B and C, examined by Alexandra Livarda and Georgia Kotsamani, likewise exhibited a similar range of plant species to other areas of the site. The main food plants encountered including cereals, einkorn, emmen and barley, various legumes, lentils, bitter vetch, grass pea, fruits, grape, olive, fig, and several wild species. Particularly interesting finds were free threshing wheat, exclusively in structure C, and coriander from structure A. It is possible, therefore, that the plant foods in the ritual zone played a performative role in communal activities. Marine animal remains, studied by Tatiana Theodoropoulou, were mainly concentrated inside and outside structure C, demonstrating that this was an area where eating and drinking took place. Both the important concentrations in this structure and the association of these finds with other lines of evidence, pottery, animal bones and seeds, may offer the potential to confirm or refute the ritual versus everyday consumption of marine foodstuffs. Ian Whitbread and Antonia Livariatu commenced petrographic analysis of clay samples collected in the 2014 Lefkandi study season, undertaken in collaboration with the BSA's Fitch Laboratory. And this gives me the cue to summarise briefly the work of the laboratory in 2015 under the broad theme of materials, technologies and innovation. On this map, each dot represents the location of research in which the Fitch is involved. Results from the Lefkandi study are being integrated with the Fitch Laboratory project on ceramics from Eretria, in collaboration with the Swiss School of Archaeology in Greece, now reaching completion. Combination of data from the 2 sites, together with further geological sampling, will document the ceramic landscape of central and southern Euboea to an unprecedented degree. A similar landscape approach has been adopted in the diachronic study of pottery and production and supply in Palekastro, while an analogous investigation is planned in collaboration with the Olynthos project. This will build upon the Fitch's ongoing research in northern Greece at sites such as Toumba Thessalonikis, Angelochori, Methoni and Mendi. Closely related is the Thasos Roman project in collaboration with Jean-Sébastien Gros and funded by the French School that builds upon previous work by Ian Whitbread on amphora production and should gradually fill the analytical gap in the northeastern Aegean. The Fitch's expanded international reach is reflected in the collaboration with the University of Liverpool in the analysis of Chalcolithic and early Bronze Age ceramics on the Konya Plain in Turkey, and with a network of Turkish universities in the investigation of ceramic landscapes of Chalcolithic Western Anatolia. Further afield still, a Santander mobility grant brought Anna George to the laboratory to analyse prehistoric Alaskan ceramics. Fitch bursary holders in 2015 included Roberta Mentisana, who worked on early Minoan ceramics from south-central Crete, while two others remind us that the Fitch acts as a base for a broader range of archaeological science. Dr. Maria Rumpu spent 3 months conducting organic residue analysis on ceramic vessel contents from Middle Neolithic Kutulu Magoula, and in tandem with petrographic analysis on early transport amphorae from the early Iron Age settlement of Methoni in the Thermaic Gulf. The latter project involves a holistic approach combining typological and epigraphical evidence with scientific data, and has the potential to challenge traditional assumptions about their areas of production, manufacturing technology, and their range of contents, thus shedding new light on aspects of trade and the early Greek economy. Dr. Erika Nitsch, a stable isotope expert and postdoctoral research assistant for the AgriCurb project, about which you will hear more shortly, conducted field research relating to strontium isotope variability in modern Crete to refine understanding of the agripastoral base of urbanization at Knossos from the Neolithic to the Bronze Age. The Fitch has also hosted a number of bioarchaeological studies, including that of the important faunal assemblage from early Neolithic Revenia Korinos by Paul Halstead and Valasia Isakidou in collaboration with Vaso Tevelikidi, which promises to shed new light on Aegean early Neolithic societies. The project forms part of a wider Thalis-funded project directed by Kostas Kotsakis of the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. Another bioarchaeological study undertaken by a Thessaloniki team was the cleaning, inventory and study of the human remains excavated under the auspices of the Archaeologiki Eteria by Marinatos in 1970 from Tumuli 1 to 4 at Vranas, Marathon. One of the highlights of the Fitch's year was the European Meeting on Ancient Ceramics Conference, co-organised with the National Centre for Scientific Research, Demokritos. During 3 days, over 200 papers were presented, covering a wide range of methodological and archaeological issues. Special attention was paid to the poster sessions, which were held at the BSA, and we thank the Hellenic Post Office, as well as BSA staff, who rose to the challenge of accommodating almost 150 posters in the library, the Fitch Laboratory and the garden. During the conference, 3 pioneers of the analysis of ancient ceramics associated with the 2 organising institutions were honoured upon their retirement. Richard Jones, shown here in the left, first director of the Fitch, Yannis Maniatis and Michael Tite of Oxford. Much of the BSA's archaeological work in 2015 has focused on the techniques and technologies of urban life in the past. Another strand, reflected in the bioarchaeological research of 2014 to 15 Richard Bradford McConnell student Effie Nikita, is mobility. These themes are, however, not confined to the past, and they remind us of the BSA's statutory object to promote the study of Greece in all its aspects, in all periods, including modern times. These broad goals are met not only in our archaeological programme, but also in research by anthropologists, sociologists, political scientists and historians. 2 recently completed programmes of research with publications in preparation highlight these aspects of our work. Adriatic Connections, a collaboration with our sister institution in Rome, explored the links between Byzantium and Italy in the period AD 600 to 1453. Balkan Futures, also a collaborative venture with the British Institute at Ankara and the French School in Athens, sponsored 3 milestone workshops, the most recent in December 2014, on the theme of contemporary mobility and changing stereotypes in the Balkans. But this project also acted as an umbrella for other events such as Imagining Crisis, Materialities of Seeing and Representing in the Greek Critical Conjuncture, and Reinventing Heritage in the Balkans, both held in 2013, and Balkan Topologies held last year. The theme of mobility is also central to the work of the most recent addition to our staff, Dr. Irini Avramopoulou, who is our Levendis Fellow for the next 3 years, working on a project entitled Changing Spaces of Refuge, Histories and Geographies of Displacement Amidst the Politics of Crisis in Greece. I hope that these and other activities make the point clearly that the BSA takes a broad, cross-disciplinary view of Hellenic studies, exploring themes which can be as relevant to life in Neolithic Knossos or Koutroulou as they are to life in 21st century Athens. With that, I conclude this year's report on the work of the British School. Thank you.